Japan is deploying thousands of autonomous drones across its southwestern islands to create what defense analysts are calling the first AI-coordinated maritime barrier in modern warfare. China operates the world's largest naval fleet with over 370 ships, and Beijing has never hidden its interest in Taiwan, which sits just 110 kilometers from Japan's Yonaguni Island. The central question is simple. Can thousands of networked drones deny sea and air access to a peer adversary? Or is this just an expensive theater that China's electronic warfare and kinetic countermeasures will shred in the opening hours of conflict? Japan's Ministry of Defense calls it the Standoff Defense Capability Enhancement Initiative, essentially a drone constellation spread across the Ryukyu Islands, from Kyushu down to Yonaguni, forming a 1,200-kilometer arc between the East China Sea and the Philippine Sea. The drones include surface vessels, quadcopters for ISR, and what Japan's Acquisition, Technology, and Logistics Agency describes as expendable loitering munitions, kamikaze drones that can orbit for hours, waiting. China, meanwhile, has spent 2 decades building what the U.S. Naval War College calls an anti-access/area denial network, DF-21D and DF-26 anti-ship ballistic missiles, Y-8 electronic warfare aircraft, and over 300 4th and 5th generation fighters within range of the first island chain. Japan isn't trying to sink destroyers or win dogfights. It's trying to raise the cost of opacity. Every Chinese vessel or aircraft entering the zone triggers sensor data that feeds into a shared network with U.S. forces under the 2023 Upgraded Defense Cooperation Guidelines. The goal isn't to stop an invasion, it's to strip away the possibility of surprise and force Beijing to commit overwhelming visible resources before the first shot. That changes deterrence math. Now the question becomes, how does the system actually work? And where are the seams? Japan's drone wall isn't one platform. It's a layered mesh of at least 5 different systems operating under unified AI command. The backbone is the USV fleet, uncrewed surface vessels roughly the size of a shipping container, powered by diesel-electric hybrid engines that give them 30-day endurance at 12 knots. Think of them as autonomous Coast Guard cutters. They carry electro-optical sensors, maritime radar, and data links that push information back to Aegis-equipped destroyers and ground stations every 90 seconds. Japan's Technical Research and Development Institute tested 12 prototypes off Okinawa in 2024, and defense budget documents show procurement of 500 units by 2027. Cost per unit, approximately $2 million, compared to $1.8 billion for a crewed Aegis destroyer. The math is brutal. China would need to expend high-value anti-ship missiles on targets that cost less than the missiles themselves. Above the surface layer, quadcopter ISR drones provide the vertical component. These are commercial derivative platforms, modified DJI matrice and domestic equivalents, equipped with thermal imaging, signals intelligence modules, and encrypted mesh networking. Japan's self-defense forces ran exercises in 2024 where 200 drones maintained 24-hour coverage over a 400-square-kilometer area with just 15 operators. The drones hand off surveillance zones autonomously when batteries run low, landing on mobile recharge stations scattered across the islands. No human touches a joystick unless there's an anomaly. The third layer is the loitering munition, essentially a kamikaze drone with a 40-kilometer range and a 5-kilogram warhead. Japan hasn't publicly named the platform, but defense procurement filings reference a Type 25 expendable aerial system with contract awards going to Mitsubishi Heavy Industries. In wargame projections conducted by the National Institute for Defense Studies, 500 of these could theoretically attrite or divert an amphibious task force by forcing constant evasive maneuvers and air defense expenditures. Everything feeds into what Japan calls the Integrated Air and Missile Defense Battle Command System, IAMDBCS. a cloud-based AI that fuses sensor tracks, predicts threat trajectories, and auto-generates engagement recommendations. U.S. Indo-Pacific Command has observer access under the bilateral data sharing framework. That's the architecture. The vulnerability is the network itself. If you're China's PLA, what's your first move against this system? Jamming, kinetic strike, or cyber infiltration? China has 3 obvious plays, and it's likely already tested 2 of them. Electronic warfare comes first. The PLA operates Y-8 and Y-9 electronic warfare aircraft capable of wide-spectrum jamming across GPS, satellite communication, and commercial LTE frequencies, the exact bands Japan's commercial derivative drones rely on. In a 2023 exercise observed by Taiwanese defense analysts, PLA Navy ships successfully degraded drone operations within a 50-kilometer radius using shipborne jammers. Japan's countermove is frequency hopping and laser communication backups. But those only work if line of sight isn't broken. Dense jamming could force the drones into autonomous mode, and autonomy without network updates means they're operating on stale threat data. Kinetic strikes are the blunt instrument. China's DF-16 short-range ballistic missile has a circular error probable of under 10 meters and costs roughly $1.5 million per shot. In a simulated scenario run by RAND Corporation, a salvo of 50 DF-16S could eliminate fixed drone recharge stations and command nodes across the Ryukyus in under 30 minutes. Japan's answer is dispersion. No single node controls the swarm, and mobile recharge stations can relocate every 48 hours. But dispersion has a ceiling. The more spread out the logistics, the more vulnerable the supply chain. The sleeper threat is cyber infiltration. Japan's IAMD-BCS runs on a hybrid of US-provided Link 16 architecture and domestic software developed by NEC and Fujitsu. In 2024, Japan's National Center of Incident Readiness reported over 200 attempted intrusions into defense contractor networks, some traced to IP addresses in China. If the PLA compromises even one sensor feed, it could inject false positives, phantom threats that force the system to waste loitering munitions or reveal defensive priorities. Japan is air-gapping critical nodes and running continuous red team penetration tests, but offense always has initiative. So China has answers. The question is whether those answers scale. Can China neutralize thousands of targets faster than Japan can replace them? Drop your comment below. Japan isn't betting that drones stop China, it's betting that drones buy time and impose cost. Here's the actual wager. In a Taiwan contingency, China's optimal strategy is speed. The faster Beijing can establish sea and air control, the narrower the window for US intervention. RAND wargames consistently show that if China can complete an amphibious operation within 72 hours, the probability of direct US military involvement drops significantly. Japan's drone wall stretches that 72-hour window by creating what strategists call a transparent battle space. Every Chinese vessel transiting the Miyako Strait gets tracked. Every air patrol gets logged. US and Japanese commanders see the same operational picture in near real time, which means Beijing can't mass forces without triggering pre-positioned responses. This isn't just surveillance, it's strategic signaling. When China knows that mobilization equals immediate detection, the calculus shifts. Surprise amphibious operations require stealth in the build-up phase. Japan's drone network strips that away. Intelligence analysts estimate that the SHIELD system could detect fleet movements 48 to 72 hours earlier than satellite reconnaissance alone, giving Washington and Tokyo critical time to position assets, activate defense agreements, and coordinate with regional partners. That early warning compresses Beijing's decision-making window while expanding Tokyo's response options. The cost imposition math is even sharper. If China wants to suppress the drone network before moving on Taiwan, it has to expend missiles, flight hours, and electronic warfare assets on a distributed target set that regenerates faster than traditional air bases or radar sites. Japan can replace a $2 million USV in weeks. China burns a $1.5 million missile to kill it. The exchange ratio favors defense, which is rare in modern warfare. More importantly, every missile spent on drone suppression is one fewer available for striking air bases, ports, or command centers, the high-value targets that actually cripple defensive capacity. The US Navy is watching this closely because it has the same problem in reverse. How do you defend a $13 billion aircraft carrier against swarms of $100,000 Chinese drones? Japan's experiment might provide the template. If distributed, low-cost systems can genuinely complicate peer adversary planning. Every Navy operating in contested waters will want the playbook. But there's a darker scenario. If the system works too well, it could trigger preemption. If China's military planners conclude that the drone wall makes a quick Taiwan operation impossible, the incentive shifts towards striking the network before it's fully operational. Japan's deployment timeline, phased through 2028, creates a window of vulnerability. Chinese military journals have already published analyses describing the Ryukyu Islands as the lock on the first island chain, and PLA rocket forces conduct regular exercises within range of those islands. Japan's counter is political signaling. The drones are explicitly defensive. No offensive strike capability, no first strike doctrine. Tokyo has briefed Beijing through back-channel military dialogues, emphasizing that the system activates only in response to incursions into Japan's air defense identification zone. Whether China believes that is another question. Does this system make conflict less likely by raising the cost, or more likely by threatening China's strategic window? Comment your wargame read. Japan's drone wall can't stop China, but it can deny China the thing it needs most: invisibility and speed. 3 things to watch first. Whether China accelerates its own counter-swarm technology. The PLA has publicly tested anti-drone lasers and microwave weapons, but deploying them at scale across the East China Sea is a logistics nightmare that Beijing hasn't solved. Second, whether the US integrates this architecture into its own distributed maritime operations doctrine. If Japan's system proves effective, expect similar deployments in the Philippines and Guam by 2027. Third, whether this triggers an arms control conversation. Right now, there's no treaty limiting autonomous weapons in maritime zones, and neither China nor the US wants one. But if drone swarms become the new normal, accidents become inevitable. A software glitch, a spoofed signal, an autonomous munition that doesn't distinguish between a warship and a cargo vessel. The real innovation here isn't the technology, it's the doctrine. Japan is redefining what it means to defend without escalating, to impose cost without provoking, to turn surveillance into deterrence. This is asymmetric warfare reimagined for the Pacific Theater, where geography becomes a weapon and numbers trump individual capability. Tokyo is betting that transparency itself can freeze aggression, that an adversary who knows it's being watched, tracked, and cataloged in real time loses the strategic initiative before the first missile leaves its launcher. If it works, we're looking at the prototype for 21st century forward defense. Other archipelagic nations, the Philippines, Indonesia, Taiwan, are already studying the model. The US Navy sees it as a potential blueprint for distributed maritime operations across the first island chain. If it fails, we'll know that swarms can't survive a peer adversary's opening salvo, and the entire concept collapses. Worse, failure could embolden Beijing by proving that mass drone networks are expensive theater, easily neutralized by coordinated electronic warfare and kinetic strikes. Either way, the experiment starts in 2025, and every Navy on Earth is taking notes. China's studying countermeasures, the Pentagon's budgeting for replication, Russia's reassessing Black Sea lessons learned. If you were advising Japan's defense ministry, would you accelerate deployment or wait to see how China responds? Drop your answer and let's wargame this out in the comments.